Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. Welcome to today's episode of Wisdom Talk Radio. This is where we explore the depths of conscious living and what it truly means to live an expanded life. Join us to be inspired, engaged, encouraged, transformed, and even to experience a deep sense of joy and possibility. My guest today writes and teaches about things that are important to me, like surrender, deeply listening to oneself, what I call right timing, discernment, resonance, and she loves to dance. I love to dance. She comes to all of this through the lens of leadership, as in how to be a better leader. Well, we all need this, don't we? We can be leaders in our own lives, no matter what our title is. So stay tuned. And I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the quantum connection process. You can go to the Baca Institute to discover your unique connection with the essence of who you are by taking the quantum connection quiz. Why quantum connection? We're each designed to directly connect with source differently. And knowing your own style, your own way of doing that, opens a deeper connection with the universe and with how to create what you truly want in your life. Because who you are is exactly who is needed. My guest today is LeeAnn Mallorie of Guts and she's the CEO of Guts and Grace Leadership. She is also the author of, I know it's backwards, but Guts and Grace, A Woman's Guide to Full-Bodied Leadership. She's got lots to say to both women and men, but she began her career as an executive coach in 2006, working with leaders and teams from around the globe. Yet she soon found something was missing, the body. This led her on a personal journey of physical, mental, and spiritual healing to eventually embrace the feminine side of leadership. Today, LeeAnn specializes in bringing feminine wisdom and diverse cultural values into business as keystone to solving some of the world's stickiest problems. Using practical embodiment tools, and I know she'll share a little bit about that with you, she helps people bridge the gap between the hard-driving logical mind and the deeper wisdom of the soul. I'm so delighted to welcome you, LeeAnn, to Wisdom Talk Radio. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm so delighted to be here, and just everything you said, welcoming us and what you're up to, I'm so aligned with. So I'm happy to be here.
As I read through your book, it was the thing of what I noticed most was you would talk about things that I would go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And yet you would talk about them so differently than I would. Mm-hmm. And I loved that because you bring a different kind of voice to some of the things that I think are just basically so important in life today.
I think that's really true. It makes sense. What I can say is that most of the book was kind of a transmission, and it came through embodied practice. So I'll read someone else's book and it's like, we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about the human operating system. We're talking about how consciousness works, how spirituality works, but this particular lens that I have come to it through, I won't say it's now the only way I look at it. Mm-hmm. I work to then pull back forward some of the labels that I didn't have when the work that I teach came to me. Mm-hmm. Almost like it's the language of the body. And in a way that I think leads to a different way of expression. My experience of it is that it also can help certain people who may have ideas about what consciousness is or what embodiment is. Like I've read all
Mhm.
the books, I know it from an intellectual perspective, but when you come in this other doorway, it starts to bring you more into practice. And this is just, I'm like, I always will say, like, the devil's in the doing of it. It's a great to know what resonance is, that it exists, that it's a thing. But
Mhm.
what is that actually in practice? How do you
Yeah.
feel in your body?
Yeah.
How do
How do we
you know
do
how
it?
exactly?
I loved that your book is filled with here's how you do it.
Hmm.
And not even that, but playlists for dancing. So
I
can
love dancing. That is definitely one of my deepest doorways to consciousness, but also deepest doorways to myself. So, one of my kind of signature, I don't know, signature movement practice for sure, signature daily practice, but also has
Mhm.
been an initiator for me, I think, dance in a way. Could say a
Huh.
lot about that, but it's
How
definitely
so?
one of my modalities.
Yeah, no, but how so? How has it been that doorway to open you up and to connect you on a deeper level?
Yeah, I'll let me talk about me, and I'll talk about people in general. So,
Okay.
um, I'm going to start with people in general.
Okay.
Most people, well, I think we're built to dance. I think we're born to dance. Children dance without any instruction. I have a memory that's actually one of my fondest, earliest memories of being at a cousin's wedding.
Mm.
I'm 4. I couldn't be more than 4. And I'm wearing a fancy, wedding party dress or something. And I'm on the dance floor, and not a lot of people are dancing at this wedding at this moment in time. And I'm like, as long as I'm dancing, everyone's going to be happy. And I just have to keep doing this. So
Mm.
I was just like, it just felt good. And I'm like, if it feels good, it must be good. And so my body wants to do this. I'm going to do this. Fast forward to other points of time in my life. I train in dance. I get feedback about it. People say it's good or not good. All of the ways that we get assessed on that. And it can be so tender and so vulnerable. I think a lot of people have this moment of imprint about whether dance is for you or not for you.
Mm. I have 2 left feet. I don't have rhythm. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
It's kind of a metaphor for me, all of my more tender but more beautiful versions of my self-expression. And so often as I work with dance with my clients, including executives and people who,
Mhm.
like, I thought I signed up for a leadership training program. There's this thing that will come out like, oh, what's blocking me from wanting to dance? Maybe blocking me from a lot of other things. And what
Mhm.
out when I actually let myself access that is usually some part of my soul or my expression or my way of being that got left behind. So for me, I would say I trained as a dancer, and that's all kinds of mischief. All the ways you're supposed to do it, all the things that we embody as
Mm.
we're performing that maybe aren't actually good for our bodies, or that in a way talk us out of or tell us, don't breathe, don't access in that way, don't
Mm.
feel, make sure you're seen a certain way. So my path, particularly around dance, has been that early moment. Fast forward to a lot of training. And then in my mid 20s, I came across Nia technique, which is, for those who don't know, a now probably 30 some year old fusion fitness, uh, not really dance, but you experience in a class more like dance than, say, yoga, fusion fitness technique that um, it was like, oh, it's about listening to your body. And I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? Like, that's not what we learned in dance class. And so then it was like another 20 years of unraveling
Mhm.
original training, unlearning, and coming back to myself and what's actually true and how does it actually feel. So it's been in the background of my entire journey and in many ways informed what I teach when I teach leadership.
Mhm. About listening to your own body, about listening to the way in which your body is an expression of who you are.
Totally. And I don't make anyone dance, but I do provide often a very strong invitation, especially when I'm in a live space. Oh, you know what? Everything that I do, it's like, try it on. Same thing in the book, try it on. If you don't,
Mhm.
do this again tomorrow, but what's the worst that could happen? And let's see what happens.
You have early on in your book something that I wrote down because it so struck me, and it was about, and it's really about daily practice, period. And I think though this was about dancing in particular. Excuse me. You said, what do you care more about than items on your tactical to-do list that tend to fill up your day.
Mm.
That's so important
Yeah.
because I talk to people, I teach people about how to listen inside for what is really almost like what is the universe saying is really your first thing to do.
Yeah.
And so that listening, that willingness to get up and dance in the beginning of your day, rather than, okay, I got to get into gear. There's something about that that speaks to maybe, and I want to ask you about this, how the feminine or how attending to or bringing forward the feminine plays out in business.
Yeah, there's so much there. Um, I'm trying to remember the quote. I will probably get it not perfectly, so apologies. David White, but there's a poem called What to Remember When Waking, and he very beautifully captures this kind of window of a moment before we really start our day. It's like in the first moments before you begin your day and the plans come online, that more is available.
Say it again.
More is available to us. So like in your line of work, this connection to quantum, or in my line of work, maybe what you're longing for, I would talk about, for example, or just what we know intuitively, right? What we can access before we start with our plans. We can always disrupt that later in the day. It's harder though. And there's this kind of opening and thing where that's accessible. And to bring it back to your question, to work with the feminine in a business context, we have to step outside of structures sometimes. We have to be able to pattern interrupt perhaps the calendar or the way that I always do things, or fill in the blank, right? Anything that has been designed to create a certain amount of structure to fill in time,
Mm,
especially if we do it, even if we don't do it out of like a performance driven energy, but especially if we realize that we're doing it out of a performance driven energy, it's like all of that fills up the space that our intuition could come through, that our deeper knowing, you know this, of course, right? But that our deeper knowing could come through. Now, it's nice to say, but what is the actual act of pattern interrupting my schedule? Like that seems very almost like silly and tactical, but if we can't do that, we can't work with the feminine because it's already, especially in the business world, so laid out what we're going to do, how it's going to be, all of these things. So to bring this through, we actually have to get masterful at some of these really simple but not easy executionary tactics, practice,
mm.
a lot about practices that then create the space for a different way of being, for a new paradigm, not just as an idea, but in the actual living of it. So I don't know if that totally answered your question, but
Well,
that's
I mean, it answered questions and it led to others, like the best answer I could imagine. Um, okay, so I know we'll get to, because I really want to, because it's something that's important to me around innovation. But
uh-huh.
you talked about this in terms of feminine,
Uh-huh.
and I don't want anybody to get turned off by that
Please
because
don't. We all need to act. I'll ask your question and
no,
then
no,
I'll
no, I think
go
you've
up
got it. I
about it.
think
Yes.
you've got it.
Please don't turn off the listening if you're not a woman or you're not sure if you like the feminine yet, because I
Mhm.
didn't either. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, go, please do talk about it because it's such a bigger thing than we could make of it.
Yeah. It's only really recently that I've even used the expression the feminine in my work. Having
Oh,
written a book on women's leadership, I started writing in some form or another, Guts and Grace, in 2008. It was published in 2020, a month before the pandemic. Even if you read the book, I don't know that I reference the feminine a lot, even at that point in time. And why is that? I think because there's so many perceptions, answers of what that is, what that means. Also, I think it can be, although I don't hold it this way at all, it can feel alienating to certain people. There's a whole, I mean, depends on what circle, right? If
mm-hmm.
I'm a man in business, I'm like, I don't want to talk about the feminine. Like, what does that have to do with me? If I'm a queer femme that's like working in social justice, I'm like, the feminine is like old news, gender is fluid. Like there's all kinds of like problematic in the zeitgeist in a way. And
Yes.
yet, if I go back to more ancient wisdom traditions and my kind of ancient listening, I'm like, no, but there's still these two energies. There's this something that we might call like
Hmm.
a yang, a masculine energy. There's something we might call a yin, a feminine energy. Some circles won't have a problem with this at all. But for me, it is the missing elemental in a way in much of how we have built society. And
Mm.
what I mean by that is some of the things you named, right? Surrender, this um, tracking and being able to plug into the whole field and actually be with multiple stakeholders. To use very business language, but like to like
Hmm.
us, to
No,
we
I think that's really important to bring that in. Yeah.
our capacities that all humans have, but that over thousands of years of building a society a certain way and then using that society to train ourselves that certain things are important and matter and don't matter, we've lost that listening a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
Past 2 years, I've gone on pilgrimage to ancient Greece, and we've both spent time in Athens, but also gone to Eleusis and also gone to Delphi. And what strikes me is how Western society was built on advising by females who were priestesses and were probably drinking plant medicine and were channeling the star, whatever they were doing,
Yeah.
right? Like,
And
and
when we're
then
tuning into the whole field.
and then we went and built these societies that actually worked fairly well until they started letting that go. Like, oh, there's a lot of power there. Let's get rid of some of those systems, right? Same thing if you look
Mhm.
at the origins of very early Christianity and then where things have gone since then. So I think the feminine now, it's like it's time for it to come back online because we're blowing ourselves up in all the ways that we are, burning ourselves out in all the ways that we are. So for me, it is just a listening to a need for a rebalancing. My book,
Mhm.
Guts and Grace, for a reason. I didn't really know why. It's actually a very early name of the book, but guts being, the different embodiments of maybe I would say healthy masculine, right? That we can get things done, that we have commitment, that we work hard, that we do some of these things that we need individually to build a business,
Mhm.
an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, we need to build a society, but also on the other hand, the left hand, this other word grace came forward and it was kind of like that's an interesting word for a business book, but
Uh-huh.
to be able to surrender, to be able to soften, to let in divine grace, to allow things to unfold and everything that goes with that, and the listening, the deeper listening, and however else you want to use it. Some of my clients are like, wait, is this like the magic part? And I'm like, yeah, shh, don't tell anybody.
So it is the magic part, but it's also the bigger picture. And what my experience is, it's the heart of how to truly innovate. So
Mm,
I used to call myself an innovation alchemist
huh?
because I'm so fascinated by how we create upon creation, how we listen
Mhm,
and bring through and then create.
mhm,
And it's very much of a whole body and whole being experience.
totally.
So I love that innovation is such a big part of what you do.
Yeah, it's interesting on the surface. I won't say I'm anti-technology. I'm like warming up to it, but I am lowest adopter of most things, quote unquote, actual technology. And I live very close to Silicon Valley. So what does innovation mean? It means high tech. It means some very specific things, again, in the zeitgeist right now. But my knowing of it is much more like you described, that actually to be honest, right? If I do work inside of these companies, they're fairly rigid. They're
Yes.
innovating mostly with in mind, and a lot of what's coming forward is a next level money generating replica of what's already been done. It's not really that different. It's just the next thing that would progress from what we're already doing,
Mhm.
but bigger, faster, harder. For me, innovation is, if I talk about women in leadership, like the young woman on the team who's like, but wait, have we considered all the stakeholders? Oh,
Mm.
actually, you know, who asked the question that's the disruptive question that's not always easy to do. So that's coming from a different kind of listening. And I think more and more I think about innovation as the more organic gut knowing, body knowing, or even like knowing from a different time, place, or culture. Oh,
Mhm.
applicants are not white. They're bringing in, they have lineages that see things in different ways or have done things in different ways. And then this innovation also becomes like an alchemy of what I know or what my people knew and what how that meets the world that we're actually creating in a certain
Mhm.
paradigm right now. So it's this ability to bring through, bring down maybe to kind of work with how it came as you said it, something that's actually different, not just that's more.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I have really more recently come to say I'm an innovation specialist, and mostly I tend to coach, and folks tend to join my program when they know in a way they're that level of disruptor, or they don't, but they're like, why am I stuck? Because
Mhm.
I keep
Why
bumping
why
into
is no
this
one
wall.
listening to me?
I'm like, let's repurpose whatever that is that's happening
Yeah.
into leadership, because actually you could lead a very different kind of tack, either in this organization if there's an opening, or
Mhm.
somewhere else that's open to it. And so most of the people that I work with are on the cutting edge of their field in some way, not because they're good at high tech or they, know how to do that replication thing, but because they're listening more organically and then they're building the capacity. I think Guts and Grace is built to help us build the capacity to execute that, to practice that, to operationalize that, again, to use a very businessy word. Because it's one thing to get the download, then it's another
Yes.
thing to bring it to life, right?
Exactly.
Right.
So that's why we need the masculine, we need the feminine. So if you bring that through, what from whatever dimension you're bringing that through, and then you're joining with,
Totally.
you've got a team, you've got a group, but you're creating something. You've been tasked with innovating something. What do you see as or how do you coach people to bring that then into being?
Yeah. I'm gonna answer a little bit sideways because there's something I feel I
Okay.
need to say
Yeah.
that's so critical, and it will answer this, but
Okay.
you need both. You said this, right? Some of the answer to how I coach people is it depends on their build. So, and this is a very wild oversimplification in a way, but mostly we tend to be better at one or the other sides of that coin.
Mm.
Great at the building, the masculine, the guts, the getting it done, the structure. I'm really great at bringing in the download, but the structure thing, the completion thing.
Mm.
So when I hold group space, I'm constantly in this like, it depends on where you're at on that spectrum already, what you need to cultivate to get really good at doing this innovation, because you have to be able to flow between the two. My thesis mentor in graduate school was Barry Schwartz, who wrote the book Practical Wisdom and a number of other great books like The Paradox of Choice. This again back to ancient Greece, right? Aristotle, phronesis, this idea that there's a golden mean, you need to be able to move across the spectrum and know what's the right amount for the right moment when needed.
Mm-hmm.
Or trying to innovate, and you're with a team, and your tendency, like you're a bit like a one trick pony around, I'm going to always be the person who's got the structure, but what's needed in that moment is letting go of structure. You're not going to innovate, or something's going to get stuck. So then if I'm coaching this person, I'm like, great, we need to actually build your capacity to pause, to listen, to surrender, let go. It sounds really obvious when I say it, but like it's not what people do. They're like, oh, how do I innovate? Let me read this book that says do A, B, and C. But maybe A, B, and C is already my habit and tendency, and doubling down on that isn't going to open the door for me.
Right,
So you
right.
have to know where you stand to be able to know what's the opening. And this is why Guts and Grace, this is why for me the and this is why most of the time when someone asks me a question, my answer is it depends. It depends on what your starting point is.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it depends. Where are you at right now? I know that this will, you know this, and this is also what you do. So
No,
I'm
no, no, but this is so great to have you verbalize it because it does depend. And I remember reading when I was early on in exploring innovation, I started reading the big books out there about innovation. And I would consistently fall asleep because they were essentially doing what you just said, like building on what was already being done. And that's, in a way, that's what the word innovation means. It's like just an iteration of what already exists.
yeah.
And so I really appreciate your broadening that and opening the door to something that is so much bigger. And I think, more powerful and usable.
Yeah, there's another book I would recommend for anyone who hasn't read it is Imagine It Forward by Beth Comstock. It's a very long book, and it's
Mm.
really the story of her career in innovating in a few different organizations. And it's just like it's the nitty gritty of like how things that are different actually come to be and the tension of trying to create that.
Mm.
Yeah, I would recommend.
Oh,
It's a long
that's
read and it's worth it. I
mm.
recommend.
So could you, it's something that that is fundamental, I think, to what you teach. And it's basic and yet it's core. So as I think maybe most things that are basic and are core together.
Mhm.
Um, and it's about the practice of coming to neutral.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I'd love for you to, share that, however you wish to do that today and right now in this moment. But to speak about why that's so important before you do anything else.
Yeah. Well, would you like to do a practice? Brief?
If it's brief,
Great.
sure.
Yeah, we can do a 1 minute version of a long one.
Okay, perfect. But give us a frame first.
Okay. Um, so much of what we choose, how we move, what we do is a representation of our past, of our programming, of the experiences we've had, I would say, the ways we've shaped ourselves unconsciously, usually, but sometimes also consciously to contend with the world. And to go back to this conversation we're in about practical wisdom, if what the moment is calling for is something different than that shaping, we will not succeed. We'll meet it, but we won't meet it in the optimal way. Let's say it that.
Mhm.
Still succeed, but it may not be what it could have been. If we're talking about innovation again, if I'm, opening to something new, then I'm bringing in all of this additional stuff. Now, there's lots of ways. There's hundreds and hundreds of centering practices, neutralizing practices, breathwork practices, all the things that we can do. Part of my lineage is the Strozzi Institute Embodied Leadership School. I teach there and have studied there for many years as well. And we do this through the body. So coming to neutral can be a mindset, it certainly is. It can be a breath pattern, it also certainly is. For me as a somaticist, it's also a way of holding myself in the body that is as close to the natural design without any additional conditioning, shaping, holding, etc., etc. And when I practice that, I'm much more, again, available to respond versus react, to bring a different, a new, a wholly, first time ever uh, next thing from whatever is being presented to me. Now, there's a lot more that we could say. We can tie this to conversation about triggers, being triggered, hot buttons being pushed, these kinds of things. Most of us know this language. So I'm just summarizing something, like you said, that's very foundational. But cultivating a body-based practice to come back to neutral helps us have more resilience too. Our buttons being pushed helps us mm, recenter under pressure, is how we would say it in this particular body of work I just referenced, but really helps us be fresh. And most of the time, we're not. And I'm like, if the path is 10 miles, I'm on mile one. It's been a 20-year practice for me. It's a lifelong cultivation to be able to do that more and more and more. But I can say, for example, I was hiking down a mountain near Mount Shasta 2 nights ago. And I was just super aware of how easy it would be to be afraid. I was hiking down in the dark because I'd gone up for sunset.
Mm.
Wow. Uh, my nervous system has come a long way in cultivating this capacity to be soft, neutral, relaxed in the dark where there might be who knows what around me. Like this access point of I'm really with what actually is versus something from my past versus whatever I defend against versus whatever I push for. So all of that to say, a centering practice is to become more neutral, more available to what is, more ready to respond versus react. And the way I do it in a number of different ways. The truth is my body of work is very hybrid and blended from many different influences now at this point in time, but I often will come back to this very basic centering practice that works with the length, the width, and the depth of the body, plus a connection to purpose. Because in its neutral state, the physical body is fairly long and tall, right? Our spine being upright, not like you should sit upright to be a good person, but my spine is upright. And actually, when I practice that enough, that's the most easy state for the spine to be relaxed in, for the energy to flow up and down. And then I'm working with my width. So I'm opening to the amount of space I actually take up side to side. Most of us pull in under pressure. Most of us pull in even not under pressure because we've learned that we shouldn't take up space or whatever the case may be. Some of us, especially in a male body, but can be both, also may overinflate or go bigger than we are. That's effort as well. Finding the neutral ground in terms of your width side to side brings us back into, again, less effort, more ease, more life force flowing. And then we do the same thing with the front to back. So do you tend to lean forward? Do you tend to run away from life and lean back? We find kind of neutral in the middle. And for most people, when you first do a practice like this, you're like, this is uncomfortable because it's not what you've been practicing. More, and it may not be, and it may not feel easeful at first, but it is a tried, true, tested, and reliable, from a 40-year-old body of martial arts based work way to bring the body, and then that starts to inform the mind. Because when my body is shrunken, my mind goes, I don't have enough space. And when I'm leaned forward, my mind goes, whatever the interpretation is. It could be like, I'm feeling aggressive right now, or like there's danger, I need to push, or whatever our patterning is. So we're giving ourselves a bit of a leg up in terms of responding to something as in the present and as neutral as possible.
Okay.
How's that?
Great. Great. And so,
I'm sure there's more. You can probably add.
well, I mean, this is something that we could talk about the whole time, but it's something, what I love is that in my world, and I work a lot with teaching people how to connect with their inner guidance, how to bring it through, how to listen for it, how to feel it. And you can't do that with an uptight body.
Oh, I can share that. Yes.
Yeah, you can't do it if you're in an emotional tizzy. You've got to find that quiet place first and then ask the questions inside, then get the guidance. But you can't ask from oh my God, what do I have to do? It won't come. You'll just get more of that.
Totally. Would you say, I mean, I don't specialize in what you do. I have my own mediumship practice that I don't always talk about, and I'm happy to, but I don't teach this to people. Would you say that, in addition to what you just said about emotional, like, I need to perform, like that could be something that could get in the way with people and their guides, or what?
Absolutely. The expectations. Yeah, the expectations of either how I'm supposed to be, how I want somebody to respond to me, how I fear someone might respond to me, and will I be safe
Yeah,
if I soften?
totally. So there's an emotional settling available when you work with the body, and then there's also, if I go back to this idea of like shaping and where you tend to go, like I would say with my clients, same thing for leadership, right? Not connecting with my guides, but kind of. If I'm in performance mode, and that lives in my body like a subtle contract in and lean forward, available to the next
But I'm not available to
available
the wisdom.
exactly.
Yeah.
We all have signatures in this way.
True.
Let's try it for just like
Sure,
less.
please.
So, give us a taste. So, and obviously y'all can come back to this later, but take a minute and first of all, just notice what's held in your body and or what are your tendencies. If you just without changing anything feel, do you feel a little bit narrow? Are you a little bit hunched down or like overly lifted up? Are you leaning a tiny bit forward or back? We can do this in a big way. Often I'll do it standing, but we can just check in like what's our default. And then if you deepen your breath a little, drop your breath down. And very subtly, because that's how we're working it right now, doesn't have to be, elongate your spine. So let yourself get a little bit taller, perhaps, than you were, where you're really opening the channel like top to bottom. coming into full length, feeling yourself literally in your body as a conduit between heaven and earth.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, plus
Thank you.
my voice goes down when I do these practices.
Of course, you're quieting down, you're centering, but I want to hear every word.
So let's do that. Let's again come into full length of your spine. Let yourself feel that opening top to bottom and let it be relaxed. So while you're doing that, if you're efforting in your muscles to do it, let your muscles soften. And then let's open side to side. So imagine almost like unfurling out to your edges, getting a little bit wider if you were more internal or more pulled in. If you were very out, you can kind of reel yourself in a little to what feels like the right size for you. So taking up the space you take up, but not too much more. A little bit outside of your body is good. And then feel your back. If you leaned a little bit forward at all, come into your back. And if you're leaned back, come into your center. Imagine opening the space behind your body. And then feel yourself settle into the chair a little bit more, again, softening. Unlock your jaw, relax at your knees, relax your shoulders. And then come into your front and almost like imagine just extending out a little from your body in the front. So we have our length, our width, our depth. And then let's just say, so if you're listening and you are a person who's wanting to do what Laurie described, like connect with spirit or your guides or your vision for your leadership, be available, like set that intention. Oh, that's what I'm here for. And let that intention, that purpose in this moment also inform your presence. If that's so, who am I being? How does that inspire me? So you can, of course, come back to more of this, but just little micro adjustments to create more room for the channel.
Mhm. And if you're driving and listening to this, just keep your eyes open
Yeah, and do it.
and
Doing
do it. You can still
is
do it.
good. We
Mhm.
should do this practice when we're driving all the time, as much of the time as we can. It will help us age for sure.
Yeah, because there's
Right.
a way to be able to respond to traffic, to the driver that's going to inevitably cut you off.
Actually, the truth is, when I taught just now, my eyes closed a little bit. When we teach this practice in leadership, we actually teach people to practice with their eyes open.
Hmm.
Quite different than a lot of centering or practices that are taught out there, because we want to practice like we would like to be able to use it. And if we train our nervous systems to center with their eyes open,
Right.
we're in a meeting. We can center while driving. We can center
Hmm.
seeing someone like go down the ski slopes. Like we can center while we're in our athletics, for example.
Or in
Um,
the board meeting, I mean, I teach people about how to be in the board meeting or the staff meeting and be able to
Totally.
bring through what's new,
Yep.
bring through how to be with the person that is so upset on the other side of the table
Totally.
or the screen.
These days.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, I feel there's obviously a lot of resonance in what we do and who we're serving. I feel excited about deepening. What else? Is there anything else that's helpful to get into here?
Well, boy, there's could be so much. And yeah, I really, because business fascinates me. People, oh, business, the business world, yet that's where the the creativity and the creation is happening.
Mhm.
And we could think that it's not, but that's where the potential, I think, lies for being able to impact so much in the world. Um, I remember my teacher just, talking about business long years and years and years ago and saying, no, we can't have judgment. We can look at it and see where it could grow, where it could change, where it could be impacted. But let's not turn our backs to what's such a big part of the world. And so I love what you are doing in bringing all of this to leadership and to, being in the world.
Yeah. Both are needed, right? There's a whole cadre of folks that are like, let's leave all of that behind and just blueprint the next new thing. And that's totally valid, useful. We need that. And then, you know, I tend to also hang out with folks that are like, let's stay in and change the system from the inside out. And it's not easy.
No.
May or may not totally change, but I would say if until those structures are totally gone, if we don't bring new energy into them, they're not going to come along.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I would say what I feel very hopeful about is that there are a lot of people like us who are situated in those structures, in
Mm-hmm.
leadership roles. Some of them know that they're actually bringing new consciousness. Some actually kind of don't yet. And in a way, I like to make myself available to both, but to the ones where it's like, actually, you have all the keys here if you
Mm-hmm.
opt to use them in this way. And usually that's a matter of trusting that you won't be alone.
Mm.
So if
Yes.
you're listening and you're like,
Getting your team, getting
world,
your.
and I am kind of on my own here, know that if you just take a broader swath across the country, across the world, I like to say that there's like these seeds, like the imaginal cells in a butterfly, and there are many of them. They just might not be in your office. So you have to trust that you're not alone if you are one of these people.
Wonderful. Yes, you have to trust that you are not alone. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's a lovely way for us to bring this to a close, although I don't want to bring it to a close. But LeeAnn, could you share with people how to reach you, how to find your book? And I know you also have a quiz that you can invite people to take.
I do, yes. You can find me at gutsandgrace.com. The quiz is gutsandgrace.com/quiz. It is Um, if you are working with the book Guts and Grace, or even if you're not, there are 4 quadrants of skills that one needs to really cultivate to become a full-bodied leader. And the quiz shows you which of those quadrants is really what to double down on. So it will give you a lot of information about how to practice and what you might need to turn up or down the volume on in your leadership to be able to do all the things that we're talking about today. I am also on LinkedIn. If you spell my name correctly with an IE at the end of Mallorie, I'm the only one that spells it that way. So I'm fine on LinkedIn. And starting to cultivate an Instagram channel, same name, LeeAnn.Mallorie on Instagram.
Great, great. Well, all of that will be in the show notes. So if you didn't get that, it'll be there. But I'm so grateful for all that you have shared for us and to us and with us today.
Me too. And thank you for wonderful questions and a lot of synergy. It's been great to be here.
Great. And I want to thank our listeners, our viewers, our audience, you who have joined us today at Wisdom Talk Radio. And, you know, do join us here regularly for more wisdom of this kind, for more discovery, for more illumination. And if you enjoyed today, please do leave us a review. The reviews really help people discover what we're doing here, spread the word. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for over 8 years, and there's still so many people that that are longing for something. And this could be a step along that way. For more about your own quantum connection and your own opening to what's bigger and more for you, check out the Quantum Connection quiz over at the Baca Institute. And remember that you are needed. I don't know, that feels really important to say today. I don't even know why, but you are needed. Thank
Exactly.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.